Okay, so let us look at resources and development. So, can you identify and name the various items that are used in making life comfortable in our villages and towns? List the items and name the material that is used in their making. I'm pretty sure, friends, you can identify a lot of the items that we use that make our life much easier. Now, everything that is available in an environment which can be used to satisfy our needs, provided that it is technologically accessible, it is economically feasible, and culturally acceptable, can be termed as a resource. Now, resource is a very important idea, and that's what we are going to focus on. So, the process of transformation of things available in our environment involves an interactive relationship between the nature, the technology that processes it, and the institutions where this is processed. So, human beings interact with nature through the technology and create institutions to accelerate their development. Now, this is very well explained by this triangle over here, right? Human beings are at the center and they interact with the physical environment, they use technology, and they create institutions to be able to accelerate their economic development. Now, the question for you, do you think that the resources are free? Gifts of nature, as is assumed by many people, this is very common. Well, effectively, they are not. Resources are a function of human activities, means some human beings are involved in doing these. So, human beings themselves are essential components of resources. This is another key point. They transform the material that is available in our environment into resources and use them. Now, these resources can be classified in multiple ways. On the basis of origin, you can say that there are biotic and abiotic resources. On the basis of exhaustibility, it means how quickly they are exhausted, right? And they are called as renewable and non-renewable. Then there is on the basis of ownership, who owns it? Is it the individual who is owning them? Is it a community? Is it national ownership or international ownership? And then on the basis of status of development, there is a potential, is it developed stock, and then reserves. Okay, so here is a quick diagram that shows you the classification of resources, and you can think about it as natural as well as the human. So the natural resources includes renewable, non-renewable. Renewable further can be categorized into continuous flow like wind or water, and biological, which could include natural vegetation in forest as well as wildlife. The non-renewable resources can be further classified into recyclable metals, recyclable resources like metals, or non-recyclable like the fossil fuels. Similarly, on the human resources can be classified as the structures and organizations that exist in a particular geography, as well as the quantity and quality of the human. So let us look at now the different types of resources that we classified earlier. So first one is on the basis of origin. So they are biotic resources and abiotic resources. Now, biotic resources, as the name says, are obtained from biosphere and have life, such as human beings, flora, fauna, and fisheries, livestock, and so on. Abiotic resources, on the other hand, are composed of non-living things, and therefore they are called abiotic. And this includes examples like rocks and metals. So the key idea for biotic is from biosphere, they have life. There are examples. Abiotic are composed of non-living things. Examples are rocks and metals. Now let us look at another classification of resources and understand that on the basis of exhaustibility. Exhaustibility means how you exhaust them, how quickly they are exhausted. So renewable resources, the resources which can be renewed or reproduced by physical, chemical, or mechanical, or a combination of all these three, are known as renewable or replenishable resources. So renewable means you can renew them, make, create them. Replenishable means again, recreate them very quickly. So for example, solar and wind energy, water, forests, and wildlife, these are all renewable resources. They do not take time to again replenish once you use, like you have the sun every day, water flows whenever there is rain, and so on. So the renewable resources may be further classified into continuous or flow, which is what we showed earlier. Now, non-renewable resources. So these occur over a very long geological time. So of course, non-renewable are also renewable, but just that they take a very long period of time. Examples include minerals and fossil fuels. So these resources take millions of years in their formation. Some of the resources like metals are recyclable and some like fossil fuels cannot be recycled and can get exhausted with their use. So this is another angle for you to keep in mind, that the kind of non-renewable resources, some of them are recyclable, which means you can use them again, but fossil fuels are non-recyclable. Once used, you have to wait till like millions of years to get the next batch of them, if I were to use that. Now let us look at how a resource is classified on the basis of ownership. So individual resources are simply those which are owned privately by individuals. For example, many farmers, they own the land which is allotted to them by the government against the payment of revenue. So in villages there are many people with land ownership, but then there are many who are landless. So urban people own plots, houses and other property. So the idea here is land is a resource that could be owned by individual, whether a farm or a plot or a house or any other property. Similarly, plantation, pasture lands, ponds, water in the wells are also some examples of resource ownership by individuals. Now you can try to make an list of resources owned by your household. Now let us look at the other type of resources, which are community owned resources. So these are the resources which are accessible to all the members of the community. So examples include village commons like grazing grounds, burial grounds, village ponds, etc. These are all community resources. Public parks, picnic spots, playgrounds in urban areas are de facto accessible to all people living there. Then you have the national resources. So technically all the resources, they belong to the nation by default. The country has legal powers to acquire even private property for public good. And you might have seen roads, canals, railways being constructed on fields owned by some of the individuals. Urban development authorities get empowered by the government to acquire land. All the minerals, water resources, forest, wildlife, land within the political boundaries, and oceanic areas up to 12 nautical miles, which is 22.2 kilometer from the coast, termed as territorial water and resources, therein belong to the nation. Then you have another category of resources on the basis of ownership that are known as international resources. So these are international institutions which regulate some resources. The oceanic resources beyond 200 nautical miles of the coastline of a country belong to the open ocean, and no individual country can utilize this without the concurrence of the international institutions. Now, this is just something for you to know that India has got the right to mine manganese modules from the bed of the Indian Ocean, from that area which lies beyond the exclusive economic zone. You might want to identify some other resources which are international in nature. Do a Google search and you will get it. Now, let us look at the resources on the basis of the status of development. So, first one is potential resources. So, resources which are found in a region but have not been utilized. For example, western parts of India, particularly Rajasthan and Gujarat, have enormous potential for the development of wind and solar energy. But so far, these have not been developed properly. So, these are resources that have potential, but they have not been developed. Similarly, you have developed resources. So these are the resources which are surveyed and their quality and quantity have been determined for utilization. The development of the resources depends on the technology and level of their feasibility, means whether it is possible to utilize them or not. Then the third type you have a stock. So materials in the environment which have the potential to satisfy human needs, but human beings do not have the appropriate technology to access these. These are the included among stock. So for example, water is a compound of two gases, hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen can be used as a rich source of energy, but we do not have advanced technical know-how to use it for this purpose. Hence, it can be considered as a stock. In fact, you might even want to look at how some people are these days trying to use hydrogen as a fuel to power the cars. You can do a Google search and you will find about this, how people are extracting this resource. Now, then you have something called reserves. So, reserves are a subset of the stock. which can be put into use with the help of existing technical know-how, but their use has not been started yet. So these can be used for meeting future requirements, like river water can be used for generating hydroelectric power, but presently it is being utilized only to a limited extent. Thus the water in the dams, forest, etc., which can be used in the future, can be an example of the reserves. Now here is a little activity for you at the end of this video. Prepare a list of stock and reserve resources that you are familiar with in your local area. Try to do a Google search and see what you come up with.